we have roll call, please?
Sure.
For the curriculum?
Curriculum Subcommittee, Ms. Gately,
Yes.
Chair. Mr. Castellanos,
Present.
and Mr. Nicholson.
Present.
And observing Ms. Capola, Mr. Ford, and Mr. Satterwhite. And could I have Policy Subcommittee, Mr. Nicholson,
Present.
and Mr. Ford,
Present.
Mr. Satterwhite,
Still here, present.
observing Mr. Castellanos,
Present.
and Ms. Capola, and Ms. Gately. Right, got it.
Okay, today, I guess, on the agenda, we're going to talk about grade 8 Discovery Academy.
Sorry I was late. Girl Scouts, no cookies. So at both of the past two school committee meetings, I've outlined in big picture form and later in detailed fashion a plan to address overcrowding at the middle school level. In short, we'd like to maximize on the flexibility on found or repurposed space across several elementary schools to free up space to launch a pre-vocational 8th grade pre-vocational program for 8th grade students at the Lynn Tech Annex. The program is designed to house approximately 300 students. Seats are reserved in proportion to overcrowding, the most being for Breed, then Marshall, then Pickering. We've opened the application process and as of today have received 283 applications. The deadline is tomorrow, as that number will go up. While the opening and closing of similar programs has happened without committee vote in years past, it seems clear to me that regulation requires it. I've provided for you in your packets the language that clearly indicates that opening such a program would require your approval. I am respectfully requesting your support for this program next year.
Patrick, thank you so much for the work that's been done on this this endeavor. It's a really good. I believe the discovery opportunity at the Voc Tech is important. I think vocational learning is very important for the city of Lynn. I just had a question. I had a couple of constituents reach out to me regarding some safeguards with the 8th graders. So are they going to be housed next to 9th graders, or I know there's some socialization components that are kind of concerned. If we have 8th graders kind of housed next to, let's say, like a 17-year-old versus a 8th grader, there are some particular concerns there with socialization. And what are some safeguards being set up to monitor that?
Yeah. So the idea, first I'll say that junior, senior high schools or high schools that have a middle school component are fairly common in the state of Massachusetts, and it is commonplace to have structures and procedures that keep students who are older away from the younger students. Just thinking about what is developmentally appropriate for particularly the middle school students. In this case, I mean, there's no physical structure that would sort of forbid interaction, but it's really in the schedules, right? So the 8th grade academy will be on a similar schedule, but will not, all of their classes are on the south side of the building where ECC currently is. There are doors on the second floor that separate or would separate the Discovery Academy from the high school science labs on one side and just a hallway leading to math classes on the other side. There is nothing blocking access on the first floor, but I think that's where adult intervention happens. There are 2 monitors in the annex. One will remain, one's in ECC now and will remain for the Discovery Academy, and then there's another monitor for Lynn Tech on the other side. There'll be 2 administrators in the building, both vice principals, one on the Lynn Tech side, one on the Discovery Academy side. So I think there are plenty of structures in place where the students would be separate. Lunches would be separate as well. And while I understand and would in some ways agree with the separation piece, I'd also say that there's also some real opportunities for mentorship and positive interaction. For example, as Ms. Karakidis shared with the parents who came to the info night, and it was a packed house. This was last week. Last Wednesday. So we're planning to open the state's, of course, with your approval, first Junior Skills USA chapter, and they've come here on many occasions to present. You know how impressive that group is. So there will be meaningful, structured interaction that I think would be really good for the 8th graders. But mingling and things of that nature, there'll be structures in place to safeguard against that.
Okay, thank you. And just one more question. So do they have access to mental health services similar to if you're in the high school? So what services are at Lynn Tech? They have the same access, or is it?
So also, if you'll recall from and I didn't provide it for you again, on the budget sheet, there will be a nurse and dedicated nurse for the Discovery Academy and a social worker and a guidance counselor dedicated just for the Discovery Academy. It escapes me now as to whether or not there's a school-based health center at Tech.
Yeah, there is.
Okay, so, and that's probably in the main building. We would have to work out a scenario where they would gain access to that, do some planning around that. But in terms of day-to-day supports, it's built in at the Discovery Academy.
Okay, yeah, so the Lynn Community Health Center also, I know I asked that question because they reached out to me to say, okay, what if kids are already receiving services from, obviously Lynn Community Health Center, like the location's a little bit further. So that's why that was something that was brought up, just to see how that would be accommodated. But as we go through the application process, I feel like, the criteria will be worked on as we go. Thank you.
Member Gately?
Dr. Tutwiler, I just want to help my fellow committeeman. I work in a middle senior high school. The interaction that you're going to see with students would be mostly the clusters will work together and be together, and they won't be out a lot in the high school. Am I right on that?
Yeah, you're right.
So I think it's like a little house. I think you had it when you were at English High School. And when you were at English High School and they had a cluster, and the cluster was separate from the rest of the high school. Or was that Mr. Satterwhite?
What happened?
A cluster? Were you in the cluster
Where?
at English High School?
Oh,
The 9th grade cluster?
I was in the 9th grade class.
I went there in the
Okay,
10th grade.
so that's just about the idea. So to alleviate your anxiety on that, I just want to let you know that we have done that, and it's very successful.
I also remember being able to walk around the halls as well. That's why I kind of look on the other side. Like I remember, I
This
did.
is a different situation.
Yep.
I also would like to introduce Carly Mendonca, and she is our new school committee representative
Welcome.
from classical.
Ford?
Just a quick question. You said the number is 300. You're at 283. Is there any wiggle room over the 300 if you got like 30 overnight tonight and you had 313 or something? Is there a chance of, rather than screening out a few, is like 300 the maximum cutoff?
I don't know. I would want to talk with Ms. Karakidis to see. I mean, we want to look at like what class sizes would look like. I don't know.
But I really think, tech education is
Yeah.
going to be the wave of the future.
Yeah,
It's where we're heading. We're going to need more and more space for that as the years go by.
yeah.
That is a great idea to introduce in the 8th grade.
Thank you. But Ms. Karakidis is extremely enthusiastic. I mean, we've almost had to and I mean this in the most respectful way, contain her on this. So I don't want to say formally, like, oh yeah, we'll go beyond. Like, I really want to understand what the impact would be before I say, yeah, we would absolutely do that.
Mrs. Capola?
Is there going to be a screening process the way it is to get in? So even though there's 283, and even if it went to 400, you're going to be screening and determining the same thing. So we don't get back into eighth graders moving to ninth graders that become not the right fit for a technical school. Is that correct, or?
So it is, but let me make one distinction. So students that apply for this, if they're interested in staying at Tech, they would have to apply again.
Okay.
By rule. This does not, and we explain this clearly to parents, and guidance counselors are explaining it to students. This does not mean that they're going to be a Lynn Tech high school student. They'd have to reapply. And the application process is similar, although there are some tweaks to it that we feel are appropriate for 7th graders instead of 8th graders.
Can I speak a little bit on that? When they designed the application process at the high school level, the weighting of the different components of the process are a little different. For the 8th grade discovery, they equalized each component is an equal weight. And then the interview certainly is a big component of that. It's the opportunity for the student to kind of sell themselves as to why they want to be in a vocational setting.
So does that mean that, because normally how many freshmen come into a class at Lynn Tech?
250.
250. So if all of these have decided that this is what they want, you know, we have 300, and that's what they want, and some other student has stayed, you know, at the middle school, you know, for reasons they're apparent, and they apply. So do you think we're opening up something that could become a problem for us, numbers-wise, you know, with great disappointment to many of these who are going in the 8th grade, sitting there, you know, let's say 250 of these, you know, you have 300 and 250 are great fits for Lynn Tech. I mean, they may not end up having a spot there, and that, to me, that's I don't know, it's a little disheartening.
Yeah, so that I understand that perspective completely. I guess I would say this. So for the current 8th graders who were interested in applying to Tech, they received 400 applications for 250 spots. At this open house, as well as, you know, the messaging from guidance, from principals in middle school, like, this does not guarantee that you are, you know, a shoe-in for Tech. This is an opportunity. And for some, they might get there and decide, you know, I don't really like this stuff. I'd rather go to classical or English or you know, or somewhere else. But we've been really clear with folks who've inquired that this does not guarantee them admission to Tech.
Okay. The other thing is the budget. How accurate is your figures in a budget for this program? If I didn't say this last time, I'll say it now. I think it's pretty solid, but we're going to have to be flexible around unforeseen, like, oh, we need extra desks, or, oh, we're going to need additional materials, but we've put some thought into it. So I think it's pretty close to what it should cost to pull this off. Okay. And is there a percentage that would possibly be special ed students?
So we want to take a look at the entire application pool, and we're evaluating students equally and without you know, any sort of bias for or against special education.
Okay.
So every student who applies has an opportunity.
Mr. Nicholson?
Oh, can I just add one thing? So in the budget, there were positions, resource inclusion teacher and English ESL teacher that were italicized, because we don't know what we're going to need in terms of, so that might be a variable that would, go up or down depending on who's there.
That was a similar question, so thank you.
Mr. Castellanos?
So just one more piece, advising. So if we're looking at 8th grade, when they start to get to that point where they are going to be looking at, their 9th grade year, who is going to be doing the processing for advising? Is it the adjustment counselor or?
There will be a guidance counselor there who would perform the same function that guidance for 8th grade at Breed or Marshall or Pickering would serve.
Is that number, if we're looking at 300 max, is that a lot? Is that
It's a lot,
Is
but
that, what's the
it would be small in the city of Lynn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Madonka?
My question is about the application process regarding the recommendation letter from the guidance counselor. As a student, I feel like there might be another letter of recommendation from a teacher, because I see my guidance counselor a lot, but not every day. With a teacher, you see them every day, and your guidance counselor only knows the side of them that you want them to know, when your teacher sees you every day and can see every part of you, even if you don't want them to.
Right. So great point. The idea here is to really triangulate the process. So there are multiple points of assessment. There's students' grades, their attendance, there's recommendation, then there's the interview, right? And as Ms. Ruggiero was saying, they're all weighted equally. So there may not be like strong or deep recommendation, but then when that sit-down interview happens, bells and whistles, fireworks, there's an opportunity for a student to really strut his or her stuff.
Same with grades and discipline. That's part of the application as well. With grades, you earn so many points per A, B, C, right? So that's how they get whatever the rating is for that category. For discipline, we acknowledge as an administration and as a public school system that kids make mistakes. And so there might be discipline infractions that might be on their records. The interview allows them to talk about how they learned from that experience, how they made corrections. It's an opportunity to give kids a chance.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Mr. Satterwhite?
Last meeting, I had voiced my concerns with how the process took place, because when this was first brought to us, I had multiple questions that I wanted to ask, and then I said, I know we're going to have a meeting where you're going to have a plan in place, and I'll ask questions at that particular point in time. But that didn't happen. If you read what you attach to the Joint Curriculum and Policy Subcommittee meeting that talks about our involvement with this process, I believe it's an important involvement, so we can collaborate and maybe discuss these things, because we're not discussing curriculum right now. We're not discussing really policy right now, but maybe a month ago when this idea came to the forefront, we could have, I guess, had a better collaboration as to what it looks like, as opposed to being said, this is what it looks like. And then we have these wonderful questions like Donna brought up, how many kids are freshmen at Lynn Tech? 250. Well, we're accepting 300. These 300 kids are going to have an advantage. They're going to be in the program.
They won't, actually.
Well, they're not going to get, not with regards to scoring, but being in the place, being familiar with the people, right? I think that's an advantage. The principal's going to know who that person is. Other teachers might know who that person is. So that's what went through my mind when Donna was talking about that. Brian had a good question about, well, what separates the students? I don't have much concern with regards to that, because we have kindergartners there. So if that was an issue, we would have already known about it. But as you get older, you wander. So that is a difference. So It's not a fix, like you said. It's a program that could benefit many kids, like you said. I just wanted to voice those things. I think these concerns are valid. I think that we still don't have the data because we don't know the applicants that applied to see where they may or may not fall. Out of the 283, maybe only 100 get accepted. So what do we do with regards to the other 200?
Okay, so
Yeah.
I didn't know if that was a rhetorical question or if that.
No, that's an
So-
actual question.
All right. So let me go all the way back to the first concern. And as I laid out when I started talking, there's been a past practice around opening programs and doing so without school committee approval. So I was just under the understanding that that was okay until this showed up, and I was like, I'd rather be on the right side of the law and do it right. The timing is tough. I mean, the idea only sort of really came to fruition, sometime shortly after the new year, maybe February. And then we hustled to see if this is even something that we could pull off. I don't know what to say about, involvement other than as soon as it seemed like it was something that was possible, meaning like if there was roadblocks around DESI regulation, Chapter 74, not, being able to commingle funds for non-high school students. Why even bother engaging a big process at the school committee level if it, regulation would prevent that from happening. So after the homework was done and it seemed like this is something we could pull off, I came here and I put it in a superintendent's report and said this is something that we would like to do. And then I think it was 2 meetings later, budget with, or actually it was the next meeting, budget with some real plans around it. But we're also working on a tight timeline. We're out of school the earliest that we have been in a long time, June 18th. So we really needed to hustle and make this happen.
42 days.
Yeah, see, somebody's counting. Somebody's counting. So with respect to your question about what if only 100 students, then I would say that there's something flawed with our application process. If only 100 students were viable applicants for this program.
Mr. Nicholson.
Thank you. So I think I'm excited about this program. I think it's going to be a great opportunity. I think some of what I'm hearing tonight, and I think I've heard in the community, is that there's a concern about the mismatch between the demand at Tech and the supply. And in some ways, it's a feature of this program that you might have more 8th graders interested in Tech. But at the same time, that creates the issue of how do we meet those kids' needs in the future. And I think we're talking later tonight about the technical after-school program, which I think is one avenue towards that, and maybe something that we can continue to think about building. But I think as we build momentum at Tech, this is something that should be top of mind for us, is how can we grow Tech to meet these needs, to meet the interest that the students are having. Because I think, Mr. Ford said, that people are realizing that there's a great opportunity here. The question I had is there any implication in having a large number of 8th graders move with how we track and think about MCAS scores in terms of measuring the impact are we going to be tracking, following students from the host the original middle schools they went to, and how that sort of impacts their ultimate MCAS scores? Does that create any kind of data issues?
That's a good question.
What do you mean by a data issue?
So their data follows
The
them.
data will follow them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the schools are measured based off of the overall MCAS success. So if they're losing all their good students to this program, or a large number of it, it's going to impact the school. I think that's what Jared's concern is.
I mean, yeah, I understand that concern, but I would say I think all of our students are good students, and frankly, if the perception is that you're losing good students, well then do a better job with the students that you have. Then that would be my response.
Okay, Mr. Castellanos and then Ms. Coppola.
So enrollments next year, the trends are growing, and we understand this is something. These are efforts being made to alleviate that, and it's definitely it's very understandable on why we are putting it together this at this rate. And I just want to echo actually my colleague next to me, Attorney Nicholson. Vocational expansion, that's something that is very important. If we're looking at these numbers now, I definitely agree with Michael as well that, some kids, these are opportunities that are valuable, and I agree if every student matters. But the vocational learner it's a really hot ticket. And our workforce development opportunities are looking for kids with trades. I think we have a lot of talented young students out there that, they deserve those opportunities. And I think this shows if we have such a high demand for the trades, I think it's important to really start to explore those options. I know we have a principal. I like to hear that she's excited, and we have to contain her. And I know I was part of that personnel committee when she got on, and I remember just the enthusiasm and just energy she had. And I think that's a really great trait to have, especially with the opportunities that I think that Lynn Vocational School can bring to the city of Lynn. And I know you guys are really trying hard to get this process in, but just be wary on the when we rush stuff, when we go really fast. There's always there could be some loose ends out there that we really need to pay attention to, and I think there's a lot of valid concerns that we all bring up as a committee and as a team. Going back to what we're doing together is very important, and I just appreciate the efforts. Obviously, we had one of the bigger issues is overcrowding, and these are tough times for schools, and it's valid. So thank you.
Mrs. Coppola?
This was all started because we have no room in the middle schools. But I'm very happy to see the program because we're giving Lynn Tech back a program that's a technical program. We took the space from them, in a crisis for something else, and we're giving it back to him. And hopefully this will be a good feeder for them, and it will work out. I still am concerned that, how we're going to wean it down to 250 afterwards for ninth graders. But, I'm hoping that, I'm not saying, I know you're scoring things like grades, like Mr. Ruggiero said, but, you didn't mention attendance, but if attendance could be more of a priority. Did you say the word attendance?
Attendance is on there
Oh,
as
okay.
well.
I thought you
Yeah.
said grades and discipline. So
there's multiple components.
Multiple,
So
okay.
grades, attendance, discipline, the recommendation, as well as the interview.
Okay, because I feel the same way Attorney Satterwhite feels, that if you're giving the kids are getting high points because they're getting all A's coming out of the 7th grade, there is going to be an effect on how the MCAS is going to look when the 8th graders take it.
Yep.
If you take most of the kids out of Breed and you're scoring points to be kids who are all A students, that you are drawing that, and that is going to affect Breed. And then we're going to be here in a year from now when those 8th graders are taking the MCAS, and we're going to be wondering what happened to Breed if they went down a little. That's a true possibility. So if you could not lean as much in that direction, not make it mirror what you do for 9th graders coming into tech, but to have it a little different for them.
So I'm sorry, is it okay? In the discussions around this, We all felt very strongly that this program is about hooking the student who may be disengaged and trying to re-engage them in school. And at the tech side of it, we were very, very cognizant of not replicating what ninth grade experience is.
Great.
That was how the past eighth grade program that they did have failed. We used the tech people who were part of that time and knew what didn't work, and we stayed away from what they were saying. So this program will not emulate what that ninth grade experience is.
Good.
And even the discovery classes that are being chosen are not vocations necessarily, but they link to a vocation that if they get into the high school, they then can expand on.
I don't want to prolong it, but it isn't going to work like every other week. Academics one
No.
week in the thing.
No.
Okay, because
No,
I think
it's a
that's important.
6-period
They got to take MCAS in the eighth
Yeah.
graders,
It's
so
a,
they need
it's a
to.
6-period schedule. They have all the main core subjects, and then on that 6th period, discovery period, every 30 days, they rotate into a different discovery class. So they get to, and they have to experience every discovery class so that we're sure that they see what they do like and what they don't like.
Mrs. Satterwhite.
Thank you.
Attorney Satterwhite.
And I know that Donna helped clarify what I said. Obviously, when I meant a good student, it wasn't, we have bad students. You have mechanisms or measures in your application process. These are things that you guys created without us, so there's a reason for it. To say that you're attempting to get the disengaged student, why have grades, discipline, recommendation, and interview as the mechanism? Because the disengaged student, what do you mean by that? Is it a student that doesn't want to come to school, or?
It might be someone who has maybe not so great attendance, but are just getting, say, average, C, D grades.
And that
versus
student,
a straight A student who is in school every day, right?
so that CD student that occasionally comes to school could possibly get in over a student that gets all A's and is always in school?
Depending on how the overall score is of the application. Their interview may have scored them the top score.
But it's still only
But yeah.
25%, right? Because there's 4 mechanisms and they're all
There's 5 I think it's 20 points each.
20 points each. Okay. These are all valid questions. Obviously, as time progresses, we can evaluate the data because the data doesn't lie. But it's good that you can understand where we're coming from and keep that in the back of your mind. So when we do progress or when we're making decisions with regards to procedures, you can see where our concerns are and hopefully keep that in mind.
I'm sorry.
May I? Okay. I just want to say with respect to the application, developing it was a collaboration between the director at Tech, who's got, decades of experience around this, in partnership with the middle school principals, so that there's that developmental piece added to it. It was not. This was the derivation of a lot of conversation, a lot of thought, and a lot of experience. It was not willy-nilly. And I'm not saying that you were suggesting that, but I just want to put that out there.
Well, you were mentioning the time constraint, how it just happened in a short period of time. So my thought process is that it happened in a short period of time.
No, we had
No.
committees that were.
Yeah, no, when I say short period of time, I mean, how many meetings, how many school committee meetings have happened? There's probably only been 3 or 4 opportunities, since the, February, March to bring you up to speed with what we're doing. But in the meantime, we're continuing to work, and we wanted to make sure that, if we're going to actually proceed with this, that we have enough time to engage the process with interview, with the application process, with communicating with the community, with evaluating the applications to actually be able to make selections before the end of the school year. So if we waited, I don't think it would be possible for next year.
I'd like to make a motion to bring to the
Mr.
full.
Ford?
Sorry. You want to make a
Yeah,
motion? Make a motion.
So I'd like to make a motion to bring to the full committee for a vote.
Second.
I just want to make one comment. I mean, necessity is the mother of invention, and I think this was brought about by a need. And if there are risks, we'll take them, and the reward, I think, we can tweak it down the road. I just think the reward at the end is going to far outweigh the risk.
We have a second, so it's roll call.
Have a second so we can take a motion.
Okay. Roll call for the curriculum would be Mr. Castellanos,
Yes.
Ms. Scaly,
Yes.
Mr. Nicholson.
Yes.
And roll call for the policy would be Mr. Ford,
Yes?
Mr. Nicholson,
Yes.
Mr. Satterwhite.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Both times.
Oh, wait, we still have
We
attendance
have to
policy.
do the
Yeah.
attendance policy. That goes to you.
I mean, I'll take it. I think at this point, we are running into the open mic time and then to the full committee. I think we did receive the draft policy that you guys put together, and so I think we can review that. Our secretary, Ms. Jules, has also been working on contacting the districts that we talked about last time with regard to the clawback provision, and is still working to get in touch with the right people there. And so I think we have that in process anyway. If that's okay with you, I'd suggest, will that leave enough time if we tackle this in the next meeting for the next year? Yeah.
This is for a next year thing,
Right.
so I think we're okay.
Okay, are people okay with that on the committee?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So motion to table,
Motion to table.
Table.
second?
Second.
Second.
All right, tabled.
Table.
Motion to adjourn the joint committee,
Motion to join.
Always have to adjourn.
Second.
second and non-debatable.
Motion.
There you go.
I ask you join us in a moment of silence for Max Carbone, student at UMass from Nahant. Thank you. Excuse me, he was a student at Wentworth College in Boston.
Right. Graduated from Swampscott High.
And I'd like to welcome Carly Mendonca to the meeting as the student from Classical. Welcome. Glad to have you.
Welcome.
First on the agenda is the minutes from the several subcommittee meetings of March 28th, as well as the regular meeting from March 28th.
I can make a motion to accept the curriculum subcommittee meeting on March 28th, 2019.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the policy subcommittee meeting on March 28th, 2019.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
And I'd like to make a motion the sixth regular meeting on March 28th, 2019 be accepted.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The minutes are accepted. Next on to the agenda is presentations. The first is Safe Routes to Schools.
Yeah, there's a representative with whom we met, probably 2 months ago.
Okay.
Who was prepared to come and do the presentation to school committee on Safe Routes to School. The PowerPoint is there, but I do not see that representative.
Why don't we go to the next two presentations and next presentation, and if
Should we table that?
Pardon me?
Should we table it for another time, or?
Yeah. She don't want her rushed and then she's,
I'd say before we table it, we go to the next couple
Okay.
presentations. If she does arrive, we can make a decision at that point, or table it. If she does arrive and she's here to present it, I would think we could handle it that way. So I would say we will move to the next technical after-school program, the TAP expansion.
If I could have Mr. O'Connell come forward, who is a guidance counselor at Lynn Tech and the coordinator of the technical after-school program. I've asked him to come and give you an update, as this, as you might imagine, in keeping with the theme of our conversation about the Discovery Academy, is a program that is growing in popularity, and we have plans to expand it. But before I turn it over to him, I'm going to embarrass him. First of all, this gentleman has done an incredible job bringing this TAP program to life. It was an idea 2 summers ago that he just took and ran with, and this has become an incredible program. And it's not a surprise at all to me that he was recently honored as the Mass Association of School Counselors Rising Star for 2019. And that there's our other presentation. This is an award that goes to recognize guidance counselors who in their first 5 years are making major contributions to the craft of guidance, and we're happy to have them.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Our pleasure.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Congratulations.
I have a slideshow. I don't know, but I can do it without it.
They all have it.
Yeah, we have it. We have hard
Here's a-
copies.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Yep. All right, we can go from there. That's fine. If you guys have hard copies, that's fine. We don't, yeah. Just thank you for having me, first of all. I know that a lot of you are familiar with the TAP program, but I just kind of wanted to explain what happened with TAP for this year, and then what the expansion is going to be for the summertime. So for the fall session, students from Classical, English, and Tech were given the opportunity to learn vocational skills in a 10-week period after school. They came in with meager skills in cooking, automotive technology, auto collision repair, and they left with some serious working knowledge in each field. I'd love to take credit for how well the program's doing, but honestly, it's all to do with the staff at the program. They're the ones that really take over, and they do a phenomenal job with taking their skill set and turning it into skills for the students. We have for the fall session, we had three shops that we ran. We ran auto technology, we ran auto collision and repair, and we also ran culinary arts. So Mr. Winoski did auto technology. Students came in and they learned tool identification and car maintenance safety. They quickly learned how to change oil, change tires, and repair tires, replace worn belts and faulty belts. The auto technician students worked their way to learn how to do milestone repairs. So you're talking like 20,000, 40,000, 50,000 mile repairs that you would be industry standard. We've had students that took that skills and went and got jobs at Honda North. We have students that are working at Pep Boys now. Like we see them all over the place, and like, oh my God, I did the TAP program. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like they're actually taking these things and going out into the field and like and really using them, which is really great. Mr. Brogan with the auto collision repair. The students were exposed to automotive body identification, small dent repair, automotive painting and techniques. In addition, the auto body students got the opportunity to repair, refinish, and custom paint their own metal panel. So what they did was they got a panel that was the size of a car door, like the width of a car door. They banged it, and then they turned it really flat, and then painted it out, and you know what I mean? So they had something tangible to take home with them. And then with culinary arts, we actually ran that program with 2 teachers because we had such a need. So we had 36 students do that program. So the culinary arts students learned skills in properly setting a table, reading a recipe, kitchen safety and sanitation. They catered and served a sit-down dinner for the students and the staff of Project Yes from Thurgood Marshall. And each student was given the opportunity to become ServSafe and allergen certified, which those are industry standard certifications. So they took those, and now they can go, and when they go to apply for a job, they can say that they already have those, and those businesses are not on the hook to try and get them allergen certified, which is necessary to become a waiter or work in a kitchen or any of those skills. I'm happy to report that of the 67 students that did the fall session, 16.4% of those students were special ed students, and 13.4% were English language learners. So we're really trying to broaden the amount of students that are coming into vocational ed. We want to give everybody the opportunity to learn. And if they have that capacity and they can safely be in a vocational setting, then we say, come on over, let's give it a try. We'll give it a try. For the current session, we did culinary again. This time we're not doing Project Yes. We're going to have the All-Stars group come over on May 16th from Breed, and the students are going to cook, and they're going to serve them dinner. So those students get to work on, you know what I mean, going to a restaurant and like how to, you know what I mean, how to act in a restaurant, and our students get that experience of actually working with having to serve dinner. This time around, we only ran 2 shops. I don't know if you're aware, but all of the vocational teachers have to do the what was the training? Retail, thank you. Yeah, the retail. So we did have a limited amount of teachers that did not have to do that. So we ran 2 shops. We still had an overwhelming amount of students apply, which is always great. But we ran intro to Adobe Illustrator and screen printing. Mr. Vega over in that shop ran that. And despite the technology limitations, he was able to teach the students how to make silk screen plates and prints, how to use and maintain industry standard printing and machines. He did a really great job. He said, it's the old school way, so he was really good with that. I'm happy to report that 15.7% of the students were special ed students for this session, and 23.6% are English language learners. So that we are seeing an increase in that, which is really great. And the reason why I'm here is to talk about the expansion. For the summer of 2019, we are going to offer a summer session of TAP for the first time, which I'm really excited about. This is going to give Lynn Public School, high school students the opportunity to come in and work on some vocational skills, of course. The plan is to run that from June 24th to July 17th. We're going to offer 5 shops, and that's going to be over a 4-week period. So they're going to come for 4 weeks, and it's going to be 3 days a week, Monday through Wednesday. The students will be in shop from 8 in the morning until noontime. From noon to 12:30, they will eat lunch. And then a new twist that we're adding this time around, from 12:30 to 1:30, they're going to work on career building skills, writing a resume, interview skills, how to look for jobs. Believe it or not, that's like one of those things you don't really think about. Like, okay, now that I have these skills, how do I go and look for a job, and how do I put that into action? So those are things that we think that are really important. And then they're also going to have the option to do a basic OSHA certification, which is a safety certification. So they will be able to get an OSHA certification, which again is an industry standard safety certification that you would need to work in a lot of different vocational fields. The total number of spots that we're anticipating that students can fill is 100. So we're hoping to get 100 students for the summer. Well, I know I'm going to get 100 students for the summer, right? Dr. Tyrweiler made me promise. So I told him I would. So we're going to have 100 students. As far as which shops we are running, I actually have 8 different vocational teachers who are interested for the summer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually survey the current TAP students and see what they think would be, things that they would be interested in if they came for the summer. But we definitely want to try and target some more of the skill trades. Plumbing, carpentry would be great. Something in the medical field, which we haven't been able to run yet, would be really good. And so we do have a teacher that's interested in that. So we do have a lot of really great things going on with the program. And Dr. Tyrweiler is very nice, but there's a lot of people that go into making this thing run. And it goes from the superintendent to the deputy superintendents. All the principals are great. The guidance staff at all the schools really have bought into the program, and they send me kids that they think would really shine in this setting, but for whatever reason can't get over to the Voc, which is, we try. And so, there's a lot of people that go into making this thing run, and it's been a real honor and a pleasure to be involved with it. So thank you all for everything, and thanks for listening.
Thanks for the presentation.
If you have any questions, yeah, of course.
Member Satterwhite?
Thank you. I think we all agree on the committee that after-school programs are extremely important.
Sure, yeah.
And they look different for different age groups. So this fits in right into it.
Yep.
What do the hours look like for the summer session?
So it's going to be 8 to 1:30.
8 to 1:30?
Yep.
And the student will still get credit?
Yeah, we actually had talked about that, yep. So if they're Lynn Public School students, we can do that. So.
And so we're accepting students that aren't Lynn Public School students?
We're going to look and see how many, we want to fill all the seats. So if you think about our summer school model, we accept students from other communities and they tuition in.
Okay.
If we're unable to fill all of the seats, that would be something we would think about doing.
Okay. And the students will still be fed during the summer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe that there's a program that does that anyway, so it kind of coincides. The only difference really would be that we're not going to bus the kids in. The kids actually take a bus from their sending schools to Lynn Voc, and then we actually have a bus that brings them back because it's nighttime, and you know what I mean? We don't want them walking that late at night and, getting them here quickly after school. But in the summer, we said that, if they do want to come, then, we would not have that option. But other than that, it's going to run pretty much basically like we do during the year, just, the times are a little bit different.
It's exciting news. Thanks. For
I'm excited to see how it goes.
Member Nicholson?
Thank you. Well, first I just want to say thank you so much for your work on this, and thank you to everybody that's been involved. It's
Definitely.
a really exciting program, and I think really addresses squarely an issue that we are facing in the Limpo schools of having students that are interested in getting vocational opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely.
It just makes a lot of sense for so many reasons, and it's a great use of really a tremendous resource that we have in the city in having a Voc Tech in our district, and opening up access to that to students around the city is really exciting. And I love the additions that you're talking about this summer. I mean, it's a great opportunity to touch on different shops.
Right.
But also, I think that's really interesting, the job skills that you'll be teaching. And hopefully, depending on how that curriculum goes, maybe there's ways to think about how those can be brought to other types of programs around the district.
Right.
If
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
having
no,
success
absolutely.
with that. So one of the questions I had was, you mentioned that you guys are seeing students finding jobs in these fields.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way to sort of get at that sort of data systematically to get a sense of where our TAP students are in 4 years or whatever?
I mean, the follow-up would be pretty tough to do. I mean, it would take some time, but I mean, you could keep up with the students. I mean, essentially. I mean, we do it with the Voc, but again, we have a lot more information on the students.
Yeah.
And we do a follow-up survey with them. So 4 years' time would be probably tough, but you know what I mean? We can definitely make like a phone call from like one session to the next and say like, hey, how did it work out for you? Are you kind of working in the field? Some students do it for enrichment purposes, so like not all of them are looking to like get into those industries, but you know what I mean? Having the option and having that resume builder is always like really great, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, and particularly when we're talking about career type skills in resume and interviewing, job search, I mean, people get to use LinkedIn today in ways that you wouldn't have before, and that's a way you can kind of keep track of people.
That's true too.
So I wonder if there's a way that incorporating into the resume building, like how to create a LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, I'd really love to talk to you about that, and maybe we can kind of collaborate, because if you have any ideas, like I'm all about, like, you know what I mean?
Right.
All about that.
And then that creates the ability in 3 years to be like, this is all the LinkedIn profiles, this is what kids are doing, and also to reach them and say, hey, can you talk a little bit about what TAP meant to you? Or
No, yeah, absolutely. No, that's a really great idea.
Member Gately?
I just want to say thank you.
Oh, thanks.
I think the students in Lynn are like grateful to the staff, everyone. This program is awesome. It's going to help a lot of students that may not have that career to go to or the college to go to when they
Right.
get out of high school, and help them work. I just thank you.
No.
That's all I have to say. I have no
Well, I
questions.
appreciate it.
I think you're brilliant and doing a great job.
Thanks. Well, thanks. You.
Member Castellanos?
I want to start by saying I'm grateful, and there's a lot of gratitude in the room today, and thank you so much for presenting to us. It's very important to note that tap into your potential. I think in its name itself, your potential. Sometimes we see youth, we see kids in these neighborhoods and these schools. They never tap into their potential. They never get that opportunity. And I think this opportunity to really tap into another skill set, because not everyone's going to college, and not everyone's going to be able to afford college, and not everyone wants to go to college. This is an alternative pathway to other programs. When I look at automotive technology, automotive collision and repair, I think UTI. I think outside the box in ways to really get these kids up and going, because some of these students are parentified, already working. They need to get these skills to survive, to meet equity, to meet these. We say basic needs like food, shelter, even an emotional security. I think this provides kids with hope, and tapping into some of the data. I don't want to echo Member Attorney Satterley on the data collection of this. I think it would be really important to start to collect this data for grant eligibility. Because if we're already doing it, and if we're looking at an expansion, when I see expansion, when I see the level of this is a hot item, this is really good, right? Let's get credit for it. Sure. Let's collect the data so we can get involved with some larger partnerships, so we can get some money and some resources that we need, that we could use to help benefit the students out there. And I think that's a really important task to put on. Obviously we got to start somewhere.
Right.
I know 4 years ain't happening. That's a little bit farther, but to start to develop the mechanisms, the tracking mechanisms are so vital to getting eligible for some of these larger grants, and I can see the district moving into that direction. They do a great job. They're on attack mode for money, and that's a very important task, I think, right now. So thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. Great job.
Thank you.
It's exciting.
Appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Next, I know we We'll put it off till the second piece, but the Safe Routes to School, Massachusetts Safe Routes to School. Welcome.
I apologize if I was tardy. I was stuck behind a fire truck. It took me much longer than I anticipated. Good evening. My name is Judy Crocker. I work for the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, and my gratitude to Dr. Tutwiler and his administration for this invitation. Do we have the PowerPoint?
They have it in paper form.
Okay, in paper form. All right.
Do you want one?
I would like one.
You're welcome.
Do you have that PowerPoint? I brought a thumb drive just in case,
Yeah,
but
it's okay.
that's okay. So, Safe Routes to School is actually a vibrant program in the city of Lynn, and so I'm really here just to give an update and just to let everyone know that we're giving you a pat on the back. So thank you. The program is really all about promoting sustainable student transportation. This program is not unique to Massachusetts. It's actually an international program. It started in Denmark. It's in about 45 countries. It's in all 50 states, including Massachusetts, obviously. So the funding for this is through the Federal Department of Transportation, and it trickles down to the state. Thus, my boss. The program across the board has been very successful in increasing the number of children who walk, bus, or bike, or even take the school bus to school, as well as decreasing parent traffic and idling. As you can see, we are partner in actually about almost 65% of the state of Massachusetts. So we are not just central to this part of the country, part of the state. In terms of meeting local needs, we have a number of tools in our toolbox that I'm just going to give a very brief overview about tonight. But it really depends on what the community's needs and challenges are, how we can best benefit your students. Some of them include physical activity, safety, traffic congestion. We like to educate parents that they are not in traffic, they are the traffic. The environment, attendance and tardiness, which I understand is a concern here in the city, as well as communication. How do we get the word out about these initiatives? So the foundation for our program are what we call the 6 E's. So it's evaluation, education, encouragement, engineering, enforcement, and the overarching umbrella, if you would, is equity. So very common in any public health type initiative. So the first one is evaluation, and these are basically parent surveys, and a number of schools here in Lynn have taken our parent survey. We offer it in 9 languages, including all the languages that you have on the Lynn school website that are common to residents of the community. And in that survey, we pretty much, it's a very brief survey, takes about 2 minutes for the parents. It can come in paper form, electronic. And basically, we find out roundabout where people live and how their students get to school. And from that, we can develop what we call a walking shed. So if you think of a bullseye, except that it's not a true bullseye, like the logo for Target, it is actually a little fuzzy and amorphous, if you would, because we go around different things. We might have the Atlantic Ocean or certain highways and, geographic, both natural and man-made barriers that would make that bullseye a little off shape. So from that, we can determine best walking routes, walking school buses, if you would, and things like that. So I have to say, the last school in Lynn to do a parent survey was the Tracy School, and I was very pleased to give Dr. Griffin a gift certificate for $250 because she had 72% of her students participate in this. And I'm going to give a shout out to Dr. Griffin. She does a lot of reading during the cafeteria hours. For certain grades, and so I gave her a book list of different books associated with any types of travel or transportation for the applicable grades, and she went shopping. So everyone's happy. So the next 2 pages of your packet from the slide deck are actually just an overview of that report, and the next page is the walking shed, the colored page. So the next topic we have is education. We do a lot of education. Traditionally, we do pedestrian safety and bike safety. Pedestrian safety, we're very pleased that we make the state frameworks for health and wellness, so we're not enrichment, we're actually curricula. Our goal to make it more sustainable is to embed it into the health and wellness curricula for grades 2 and 3. Although that being said, we can really provide it for any grade applicable. We can elevate the program in every direction. We were doing a lot of this last fall in the Merrimack Valley after the gas explosions because of all the detours in a few communities that don't have busing. So bike safety is a little different. We do more assembly style because we don't have a bike for every child, so it can't be skills-based. And so we do it assembly style, but we can do it more skills-based, and we call that a bike rodeo. Oftentimes, we partner with local police stations or recreation, things like that. That's more after hours or summer programs. So, encouragement is the fun part. Encouragement is how we celebrate how the kids get to school. Everyone has to get to school, so let's just make it a little bit more fun and inviting. So the Safe Routes to School program in Massachusetts, we have what we call flagship days, where we celebrate en masse, if you would, how the children get to school. We do this 3 times a year. In October, we have International Walk to School Day, which, as it sounds, it's celebrated across the world. In February, we have a winter walk. And in May, we have Massachusetts Walk to School Day. So you don't have to do it the specific day we do it, but it's, thereabouts. And we just get a little bit more press if you celebrate it around that. But here in Lynn, we have some schools that, once the weather is good, they're out there walking every day, or they're walking every Tuesday, Thursday, or whatever the formula for their school might work out to be. So it can be once a season, it can be once a week, once a month, or every day. Every school does it a little bit different. Everyone has a different formula. On those days, we try to make it give it a little twist, and some schools like to give it a theme. The photo in your packet is what I'd like to call Crazy Sock Day. So, we're talking low-cost, no-cost ways of making this a little bit more fun. One of the things that we also do to encourage people to walk or bike to school is a program we call Park and Walk. So to try to get some of the parent car congestion away from school campuses, we try to do a walk audit and determine some areas where people might be able to park their cars and the parent would be able to walk with the child to school. I mean, we're all counting our steps these days, so we're just trying to kind of spread the wealth. Some of the places, they don't have to be a so-called park. I have many communities that we have partnerships with local churches. Wise, any place where you have a general parking area or a couple of quiet streets. It really depends, again, on the school and the particular neighborhoods. So, next we talk about enforcement. Enforcement is not doesn't have to be a negative thing. We do a lot of education with crossing guards. We have training videos in English and Spanish and training materials, so we work with the police, school resource officers, and the like. We also do something that is rather unique for our program, is that we do arrival and dismissal plans. All the children have to get to school and all the children have to go home, but how do you do it? Do you have a communication plan? Do you have a map? Do you separate your modes of transportation so that the walkers and the bikers might be more safe? Are you looking at mitigation points, conflict points on the campuses? Are the school buses given priority? If you have school buses or the special education vans, do they all have enough space? So there's a lot involved in it, and it's just a different avenue that we use to make a set of recommendations. Under engineering, full disclosure, I'm not an engineer. I have letters after my name, but those are not some of them. And so what we do, though, is that we do what we call soft engineering. So we do mapping. We do a lot with safety enhancements. We really try to stress the use of regulatory signage on school property. This is not the norm. If you ask a traffic engineer to do a traffic study of a school property, you can buy anything online, basically. So not everything is enforceable by the police. Even if looking at a no idling sign, not all the no idling signs are enforceable. So that being said, we are partners with the Department of Environmental Protection. So if Lynn has a green team in any or all of your schools, often that is associated with food waste and recycling and materials during the lunch hours, and the students are typically very active in this, and it's a free program. Then they also offer free no idling signage, which is wonderful because it used to be just through grant money that many communities would get that. So, and we also work on kind of on the non-infrastructure side of engineering, forming task force, committees either per school or per district of the Safe Routes program and how to best promote it. So in conclusion tonight, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the current program here in Lynn. You do have an active walking program in the vast majority of your schools. Some of your schools have won awards, the Brickett and the Tracy I just mentioned. The Sisson School, one of the things that we do for the kids as part of education is that we have a lawn sign contest. So, audience, I'll show you in a minute. So these two are from students last year at the Sisson School. So for 2017 and 2018, Sisson students were actually some of the winners. This year's theme, for example, was no idling. So unfortunately, Sisson didn't win this year, but you've got 2 years under your belt here. So, so for the audience. And if it's okay, could I leave these with you? I have plenty, so if you want any more. Put them in every park and every neighborhood. So that's just one example of some of the things we've done. I'd like to really shout out the accolades of the Lynn Woods and the Sewell Anderson schools. We have something that we call partner categories in the office, and these two schools consistently they each have a special education teacher who really is in charge of walking to school every day with the kids. So the kids each meet at a different park, and then they walk to school. And they do this in all kinds of weather. Who doesn't like an umbrella, and the boots come in all fancy colors these days. So the kids really, no matter what the weather is, they tend to hold off in the winter months, understandably. But, it's kind of, to me, above and beyond the call of duty. So it's very nice that these professionals are reaching out that way. Next steps, I have in your packet partnering. So the Safe Routes to School program in Massachusetts and in most states, we request that a school individually or a district be partnered. So we do have districts where you only have a few schools here and there that participate in the program. So basically, it's a very simple page, and it just says that, yes, you want to work with us, and we will work with you. You're not giving away your firstborn child or anything like that. In your packet, I have two schools here, the Ford and the Connery, and the Ford has signed. So the only school outstanding right now is the Connery. Where this might be a future benefit, more on the municipal side of governance, is that the Complete Streets program is active transportation. Safe Routes is active transportation. Many Complete Streets policies by municipals, on the municipal side of things, mentions Safe Routes to School, or just the general premise of active transportation. So it's kind of a check mark in a box if you are applying for grant money, and pretty much that's where the grant money is these days. If the majority, which you definitely have, or all of your schools are partnered. No pressure. So that, and one thing that I would like to have discussions with moving forward is how we could have the pedestrian safety be more widespread in the Lynn schools. We do participate in a number of the schools with this program, but just like to see if we can try to get it into the health and wellness curriculum. So In the last slide, I have to say, in the packet, I always like to end with something by the kids, because that's why we're all here. And it's just, it's a picture for the audience. It's a picture of a snowman just made on a piece of poster board made out of cotton balls with a snowman face. And so the children in this particular school, they had different colored snowmen, and this snowman here was the students who walked to school. So they all got to put their own snowball on them. So again, no cost, low cost ways of getting the kids involved and making, a little bit of self-ownership in this. So, any questions?
Great. Any questions? Member Castellanos?
Great presentation. You answered a lot of my questions. Every time I would write a question, you would answer it like right away. So I just want to say thank you for your presentation. I just have your partnership with the Lynn Police Department, is that something that's existing?
I can if we have something like a bike rodeo, which is a skills-based bike workshop, if you would, then on some communities, I do try to reach out to the police department, just to make it a little bit more sustainable, and so that, if the kids are riding on the road, the police are responsible for the road, so it just kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah, but we also, I believe, if I have this correct, our cross guards are part of the police budget.
Mm-hmm.
Is there possible partnership eligibility there for grants?
I don't know of any grants myself. What we can do when we talk about crossing guard training, everything is on our website, and I apologize, I should really step back a moment. Because I work for the Department of Transportation, we are your taxpayer money at work, so everything we have is free. So you just have to find the tools in our toolbox that you would like. So I have counseled the school, police departments in the past of, for example, do you really need a stop paddle? Or I need some training materials, or how do you coach about no idling, things like that. Work with DPW about how to really make a map so you can figure out the best places where to put the snow and the places not to put the snow in terms of bus stops. So there's different ways that we can reach out and work with different departments.
So if I hear that, so we can get professional development to our cross guards through you?
It's on the website. You
So
don't
we
even
can-
need- Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So-
really good to know.
And it's because we put it purposely on the website so everyone had free access to it. So
Member Satterwhite?
Thank you. Do you see throughout the state that PTOs and PTAs are involved with the encouragement aspect of it, or do you? Okay, so
yes. I have not noticed that as much here in Lynn.
okay.
But the difficult thing about the Safe Routes to School program is that it is rather large, and it is different in every community. In my community, I am a municipal committee, but my boots on the ground volunteers are the PTA. In some communities, it's the Y, or the Boys and Girls Club. In other communities, it's certain staff within the schools. It could be the PE teacher, the nurse, special education, as the two schools I mentioned. At the Tracy School, it's the principal. But I haven't really made inroads in the city of Lynn in terms of working with the PTOs. But that is very viable, yes.
Thank you.
Member Gately?
I'm just wondering what that acronym stands for, MUTCD.
Okay, it's really for regulatory signage, is the Manual for Uniform Traffic Calming Devices. And that's pretty much, if you would, the Bible for regulatory signage. And so all regulatory signage that the police are able to enforce are in this manual. I'm sorry for the alphabet soup.
Yeah.
It would have filled up the slides, so.
It's okay. Thank you.
Great.
Great.
Thank you.
presentation.
Member
Thank you.
Capola?
Is this something that we need to vote on and adopt?
This proposal's been put forward. What is
Just
it?
forward, okay.
It's each school, right? Each school.
Yes.
Right.
Each individual school, although you did mention a district partnership. I don't know if that brings us to a different level or?
No,
has
no.
some
In
meaning?
the city of Lynn, all schools except for one are partnered with the program. And
Just wait,
so.
we'll fix that.
No, but I'm just saying, so if you're, no pressure. If you're partnered with us, then that means that you have access to my toolbox.
Yeah.
But it's a voluntary program. For example, if PTA, PTOs are running it, we all know some years you have a harvest crop of volunteers, and others it's more of a drought. So with that, the ebb and flow of volunteers in that dimension, some years you have a robust program, and some years there's no one there. So it's not a plus or a minus. It's just as long as there's an awareness that the program is here, and if you have a particular need or challenge, and we have a tool that can help you, we're a service.
And I know the schools that are participating, like Lynn Woods.
Yes.
She has been in the newspaper. You know, she's had the paper come up, and they've taken pictures of the kids walking, and
I wasn't
it just
aware,
lets
but even
everybody
better.
know what's happening. So it is happening here.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Member Satterwhite?
We can show support for the fact that we like the safe routes to schools if need be. I think that it's a great resource with tools, and I just want to make sure that people know that this school committee does support the safe routes to schools.
So if you'd like to make a
I make a
motion to say
motion
that
to-
we support,
to,
support the efforts of, I'll look for the language, of both
the safe routes to
program,
schools.
safe route to school, as well as the efforts in the community to continue to use this great program.
I second that.
All in favor?
There's a second. Motion for this committee to accept our support for this program and the efforts in the city. And there's a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the school committee has indicated their strong support for this program and what's happening in the Lynn schools, and the success that's going on as well.
Thank you, with gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
And because this is open meeting law and you guys have voted, I would love to use that quote, so thank you.
Please feel free. Great, thank you for coming out.
Thank
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the graduation dropouts. Deputy Superintendent Ruggiero.
That's me. Okay, so let's jump right into it. Mrs. Mendonca, can I ask you a favor? Can you just flick the light that would be in the front? No, just the one in the front. Thank you. So I want to start off with the graduation rates. What you see here is a stacked column chart that shows the graduation status of the Lynn Public School students over the past 5 years. The red of the column shows the percentage of students who graduated. The blue stands for not graduated and dropped out. The purple stands for not graduated but received their certificate of attainment. The green at the top is not graduated and still enrolled, so that would be our 5th year graduation students. And a color that you can't see because it's so small, there's a kind of a brown color that stands for the not graduated, the maximum aged out. We don't have a lot of students that fit that category, which is why you don't see the color. As you can see by these columns, we have remained relatively the same for each status category over the past 5 years. We're pretty much staying plateaued. And when I looked at that with our wonderful data guru in the curriculum department, Josh Moore, who helped me pull this data together, I wanted to go deeper. I wanted to know who are these students. And so the next data point shows the data broken down by select populations. And so this line chart shows the 4-year graduation rate over the past 5 years for all students, students with disabilities, EL students, male and females. The graduation rate for all students has consistently held steady in the mid-70% range. Male and female graduation rates have also remained steady, with female holding around 80% and males holding around 70%. There is an 11.1% difference between the female subgroup and the male subgroup. Females had a 2.1 increase from 2017 to 2018 with no change for the male subgroup. So our male students are, there's a lower percentage of males that are graduating and a higher percent for females. After a slight dip in 2015, the students with disability rate has steadily increased and is approaching the all-student rate. Students with disability subgroup has had an 11.4% increase over the 5 years, and there was a 1.4% increase from 2017 to 2018. The EL graduation rate is trending downward, unfortunately, over the past 5 years. This subgroup did increase, however, from last year to this year. 1.4% increase from last year to this year, but they are significantly lower than everyone else. So I want to now go into the dropout data, because that is really where the rubber hits the road. These are the kids who are leaving our schools. So this data display is the annual dropout rate for Lynn Public School over the past 5 years. And you can see that in the school year 17-18, the last full school year, the dropout rate decreased by 0.6 percentage points to a 3-year low of 4.5%. When looking at this data, for me, it is important to look at who are these students, what's the makeup of these students. And so this data slide breaks out the students by race. And so this pie chart shows the percentage of Lynn Public School dropouts by race. So for example, of all the dropouts from school year 2013-14 through school year 17-18, 76.7% were Hispanic. So this is over the 5 years. Of all the students who have dropped out over 5 years, 76.7% are Hispanic. So I wanted to know more about that Hispanic group. So clearly the Hispanic subgroup comprises the largest group of students who are dropping out. We are currently in the process of digging deeper into this data, but in the preliminary work of looking at that group, we have identified that in 17-18, so last year's dropouts, we had a total of 199 students total last year who dropped out. Out of those 199 students, 166, or 83% of them, were identified as Hispanic. So then we dug a little deeper into that, and out of the 166 Hispanic students, 111, or 67%, were identified as EL students. The total percent of EL out of the 199 who dropped out was 56%. So 56% of our total number of dropouts are EL students. That tells a big story there.
It does.
And so we need to, as a district, really dig deeper into the EL students and what their needs are and how we're addressing that. So the district has already begun that process. We certainly have a lot more to do. But we have begun the process of adjusting the supports and instruction for our EL students through the restructuring of our ESL and ELD classrooms at the secondary level so that they are getting the language proficiency development that they need, as well as the EL focus strategy professional development that is going on district-wide. So every teacher, every school is working on this professional development. And we will be continuing with that professional development into next year so that we are all addressing EL students. This stack column chart shows the annual distribution of Lynn Public Schools dropouts by program. So there has been a significant reduction in the percentage of dropout students who are in special education. So that's a plus for us. Decreasing from 32.9% in school year 13-14 to 11.1% in school year 17-18. That was a 21.8% decrease. And we see a decrease of 4.3 from 2016-17 to 2017-18. So in 1 year, from 16-17 to 17-18, we saw an improvement of 4.3. This percentage has been steadily declining over the past 5 years for this subgroup. At the same time, the percentage of dropout students who are ELs have risen, and we can see that illustrated in this, where they now account for more than half of all of our dropouts, increasing from 24.6 in 13-14 to 55.8 in 17-18, for a 31.2 increase in dropouts. We did, however, see a decrease from last year to this year, 3.1 decrease from 16-17 to 17-18. So that was a nice decrease, but we have a long way to go with this subgroup. And so although we saw progress in the two student program groups, ELs and students with disabilities, they consistently are the weakest two subgroups in our district. So for, school year 17-18, EL were 58.9% in 16-17 to 58.8% in 17-18, and there is certainly a lot of work to do in this area. So the research says that students most at risk of dropping out are the students who fail a core subject, particularly in 9th grade. They are chronically absent or tardy. They fail to be promoted to the next grade. They are disengaged in the classroom. They have frequent infractions of school code of discipline. They are identified as low socioeconomic status. They have extraordinary work, family, economic needs. They typically could be substance abusers. And they are older than the average student in their grade. Dropout prevention is we are all working on dropout prevention, and it is a four-pronged approach. It's about educating our students, monitoring, identifying our students, supporting and intervening with them, and providing alternatives. And so this slide shares with you the, how we educate our students around dropout. The guidance counselors do a lot of this work with quarterly assemblies, individual meetings, career and college fairs, Naviance activities. They bring in guest speaker series from Mass Hire, industry representatives, Chamber of Commerce are used as a resource, anti-violence assemblies. Our title's funding supports leadership and college awareness programs like Early College, Gateway to College, 100 Mails to College, Breed All-Stars, and Project Yes. So these are all mechanisms to try and educate our students on the importance of staying in school. We monitor and identify through our wellness teams, our student study team referrals, school social worker referrals, early warning identification systems, the academic monitoring, the collaboration with teachers and coaches, the no ceilings tutoring, the collaborating with Shannon Grant providers, and Upward Bound. We support and intervene by collaborating with outside programming like the Shannon Grant providers, AmeriCorps Trio through the United Way, Upward Bound, Teen Health Centers, Mentor Homerooms, Breed All-Stars, Project Yes, and Summer School. And we do provide alternatives for students, Lynn Tech being one of them, Fecht O'Leary, the Apex Credit Recovery, Lynn Evening Enrichment Program, LEAP, Gateway to College, Job Corps, Youth Builds, LaVos Referrals, the list goes on. We certainly are looking into other opportunities to educate, to identify and monitor, to support and intervene, and to provide alternatives. Many of those fall under the SEL framework of support. So Carolyn Troy's work, she's working very hard to bring in other agencies and other opportunities to help our students to understand it's important to be in school and we don't want you to drop out. Some examples of that, and I'm just saying, I stress examples because we have not secured funding for some of these things. We're just at the beginning stages of learning about some of these things, so we haven't secured anything yet, but we are actively investigating and researching. So some of the programs that we're looking at, the Youth Harbor program, it's run by the Justice Resource Institute. It provides a case manager at each high school that works with unaccompanied youth, provides services to youths grade in the ages of 18 to 22. Those students are too old for the like DCF and the youth services, but they're too young for the adult services. They kind of fall in limbo pretty much. So there's no financial support for them. There's the programming doesn't revolve around them, and this Youth Harbor program focuses in on that subset of age of students, and especially our unaccompanied youth who tend to be homeless, need support financially, and help to keep them in school. Another program we're looking at is the Student Ambassadors Program, and that is support to students through leadership opportunities. The EL students have access to other students who were EL or are currently EL, but are, have developed in their skills and are successful, and they become mentors to the new students that come in, our newcomers, to help them understand that it's going to be tough at first, but I'm here for you, and we're going to help support you through. CTAC, the Community Training Assistance Center, is currently working with Classical on engaging students differently and including students in the process of this engagement. And so we're looking at that work and maybe expanding on that work into other high schools. We also are doing a lot with MyCap, which is the My College. Thank you. My College and Career Planning. And so we're trying to help students understand how to plan for their future and what that means. Dropout Prevention and Re-Engagement Conference that it's a follow-up to MyCap, and the district sends a team to this conference to help bring back resources and ideas. Ongoing SEL curriculum work, system of care meetings, Elliott Human Services, and trying to partner with them. So the SEL framework is starting to come together. It's a lot of work and a lot of meeting with different agencies and trying to find the funding to support it, as well as what's the right fit for our district. I'd like to end with a quote. Anybody who knows me, I'm all about quotes. This is a quote from the highlyeffectiveteacher.com, and it really fits with our core values as an administrative team and as a Lynn Public School system. Relationships are the cornerstone of your work as a teacher. Kids will work harder for you when they know you care about them. So the key to all of this work is the relationship with the student. It is imperative that we make connections with our students and have conversations around how we can help them be successful, and that is the core of this dropout prevention work.
Thank you. Member Satterwhite?
Thank you for the presentation, Deputy Superintendent. I have a question on the LPS annual dropout percentage by student program slide. I believe it's 7th page. Looks like this.
Yep.
Was there a change in any sort of type of categorization for our SPED students or ELE students? Because that's a drastic change. So,
For the students with disabilities you're referring to?
and the ELE, because it went from 24 to 36 to 50. So if you add both of them together, it's always roughly around 60-something%. So was there some change during that time?
I think the students with disabilities, the improvement in their scores is a lot to do with understanding inclusion and how to support those students. I think for many years, the rigor of their instruction and the work that they did wasn't necessarily to the level that it needs to be. The philosophy needs to be that all students can learn and that we just need to modify and differentiate for them so that they can access it, which is similar to what we need to do with our ELs. And I think with special ed, we started that process a little sooner than we have with EL. I think we've all worked with EL students and supported them, but I don't know that we have, as a district, instructed with true intention on how we needed to support EL students in how they access the curriculum. To have a student who doesn't speak any English in your classroom when you are trying to teach a class, I mean, you have to remember these students are in with general ed students. And so it's hard for a teacher to adjust their thinking around how do I teach this content to students who speak English and have, skills to be able to access that curriculum and those standards, and students who maybe have limited education and don't speak English, and how do I help them access it? And that's what our professional development is all about, is helping teachers understand how they can help their EL students access the curriculum.
So no change in the categorization of it. It's just the focus was put in one area quicker, or in a
Superintendent Tutwiler, you want
Sorry.
to?
Yeah, no change in categorization. But if you look at special ed, I mean, I feel like even though we've come a long way from 32% in 13-14 to 11% in 17-18, that trend downward is gradual. Less so, I mean, it almost looks erratic when you look at English learner. And I think that has a lot to do with the enrollment trends over the years. So in particular, 14, 15, 15, 16, 16, 17, that spike, I think, coincides or parallels pretty well the influx of students who, quite frankly, reflect a lot of the risk factors for students who drop out. Over age, I'm talking about students who enroll, who come here, who may only have a sixth grade education, who are 17, 18, years old. So they're over age. They have, that hierarchy of need comes into play. Like, I need to work, I need to sustain, keep the lights on, I need to feed myself. Those are the students who, on day one, when they set foot on our campuses, are at risk for dropping out, and I think those numbers reflect that.
Okay. And what about the increase for the regular ed from 16-17 to 17-18? What is?
So like I said, when we started digging into this, we've got to dig deeper into who are these students. On the Department of Ed website, we can actually click on the percentage, and a box will come up with who those students are, and we'll be able to track a little bit of, maybe what their educational experience has been. But you need to, that's a lot of kids to kind of weave through, so it takes time to do that.
And I just wanted to praise the Voc school because they're at 0% for 2 years in a row. So that's a big deal.
Member Gately, then Member Castellanos, then Member Ford.
Okay, I have a lot of input on this one. I'm really shocked, as probably you were, with the 55.8% dropout rate. I just took a not social emotional learner, the sheltered English immersion for my PDPs. I'm taking it through Salem State Collaborative, and I just learned Google Tools for ELs, and it's unbelievable. I learned that I could take any document that I have in my class and I can convert it to any language in my classroom and have the students be able to look at the actual document and look at the translation right there in front of me so I could help them. My question, not question, is I wonder about the class sizes. Like, as we have gone through these years, our class sizes has increased, so the amount of work, and I wrote down a quote similar to yours, know your students, and that was stressed in that course. So I didn't know if we could use Google Tools for ELs, and if we could reopen Salem State Collaborative, because that course, I'm telling you right now, it was so mindful, and I learned so much in 4 weeks. I learned, and it was like one class at at Linfield, and then the rest was online with this instructor teaching me how to use all the tools. So I think that our teachers, and I've heard that from teachers, that they would really like to have Google Tools be able to be used freely without getting blocked or whatever it's called. We talked about this, Pat. But to see this really bothers me, because at 55.8% dropout rate, we can think about the fact that students that work nights, they have to have a different schedule, so we have to change the schedule. We've talked about that. We've talked about class sizes. And I think that if we put this all together, we may come up with the dropout rate being reduced over a faster period of time.
Yeah. So, you know, I understand what you're saying. Respectfully, I think, you know, when we look at that number, that's a big number. I don't know that that number is that large because of students' inability to access what's happening in the classroom. I think it has more to do, again, with the hierarchy of need. You know, you know, who's in that number? These are often students, quite frankly, that come to us, and I don't know if you remember the presentation last year, but I talked about, you know, reflected in the number of English learners who dropped out, how long they were actually here. And you'll remember that we're talking a year at most. So these are students who don't even have the time, who haven't had the opportunity to really, you know, receive all of the services that we have to offer. They leave, and we don't know where they go, and when that happens, they count as a dropout. And my sense is the reason why they're leaving is because they need to tend to that hierarchy of need. I'm going somewhere else to go work, and I leave the Lynn Public Schools. They don't say goodbye, they don't withdraw, they just stop coming, and we have no means to contact them. So I hear you on the curriculum enhancement, but I feel like there's two. I think that's a slightly separate conversation. The bigger need would be, or I think the more important step, respectfully, would be around how do we find ways to make school possible for students who are struggling with that hierarchy of need piece.
Member Castellanos.
Thank you, Josh and Deputy Ruggiero, on the presentation tonight. I really appreciate the data that you provided. It's very, I appreciate the data engineering. I think you attacked the root very well. I think you provided us with some really, you know, some strong background information about what we're doing to attack dropout. I think dropout intervention is tremendously important. I believe if you look at your workforce, your expectancy without a high school diploma, I think that we're all aware it's a very tough job market. And when I see the number, Member Gately discussed, it made me kind of sick. I kind of really, you know, and this is I definitely don't think it's just a Lynn issue. It's definitely all around. It's national. It's statewide, and definitely there's efforts being made. And I like to highlight the membership, the student ambassador program. I think some of the ELO, the success stories, I think that could be really big. You know, any kind of mentorship program, like No Ceilings After School program. I know they're able to speak a language in a way when it's just, you got a short window of time sometimes with these kids. Like you said, they're coming in for 1 year. How can we engage these kids to get on the path? How can we sell a kid who does come from a different country, might not be at grade level, 17 years old, comes in as a freshman in high school? You know, how do you tell that kid, hey, let's do 4 years, you know, this is your ticket to success, but, you know, you're looking at inequities at home. A lot of these kids are parentified. From my own life experiences as a social worker, I see it all the time. Also, the undocumented student. I think kids that are not in the process to citizenship are impacted, are definitely snowballed into these data representations. And just to kind of put that on, just to kind of talk about the undocumented piece, I understand that when we have a student who's undocumented, they lose tremendous opportunities. They lose out on financial aid. They lose out on their learning opportunities to grow for longevity. And I think that's something I know personally is really impacting the district. I work with a population that it resembles what we look at for dropouts. And what happens to them is even more sickening because they end up in our school-to-prison pipeline. And I know I've talked about this in the past, and it's something that, you know, we can't, you know, we can hoot and holler all we want up here and just go back and forth with the district. It's not just this isn't a finger-pointing experience. This is something that's a crisis. And I think it's important to spread that message that, you know, we are working. And I think we got to, you know, when we look at that number, as a kid who came from Venezuela at 3 years old, I come from an immigrant background, and most of my siblings dropped out. I'm the first generation low-income kid. So when I talk about, you know, when I see these inequities and these dropout rates, it comes right at my heart. And I think if we can really, you know, enhance our engagement, enhance the way that we're getting into those subgroups, and not just Hispanics, but the minorities, the low income. And I know we have a SEL framework that we're rolling out, and it takes time. And unfortunately, we don't have much time. I think every day is important, every minute. It's so bright.
I would like to share that yesterday, Shannon Gardner, myself, and 2 members of the Department of Education were at Classical. They were working on the turnaround practices. And they had working groups that were going on. And I deliberately, with a Department of Ed representative, went to the EL room. It was the room where they were focusing in on ELs. And I was very impressed at the passion, the level of dedication, the willingness to work through how can we engage these students, how can we change what we're currently doing to help these students. Our high schools are not just sitting back and letting it happen. They are working hard to prevent them from leaving. And I just want to share with you. So the number of students who graduated last year, we had 1,245 students that were enrolled in 2018. 907 graduated. 20 didn't graduate but got their certificate of attainment. We had 204 who did not who not graduated and dropped out, and then another 114 who didn't graduate but are still enrolled. You know, good things are happening. We've got a lot of kids who are graduating. We also have to keep in mind that there's the annual graduation rate, which talks about all of the students who graduate at the end of the year. But then there's the adjusted graduation rate. And the adjusted graduation rate, so the annual, we were 74.3% graduated. But the adjusted, which is the, it includes the students, only the students who enrolled in 9th grade and stayed the entire cohort of the 4 years. So any student that, you know, withdrew from our high school or enrolled in our high schools would be in the adjusted. It's the students who started in 9th grade and completed the 4 years. We were 81.6% graduated. So good things are happening, and our teachers are working very hard to try and prevent students from dropping out. And I really want that message to be clear. There's certainly more work that needs to be done, and as a district, we are looking at that. And our EL population are the kids we really need to focus on, as well as our students with disabilities.
Member Ford and then Member Capola.
Just a couple of quick questions. On the annual dropout rate per year, what does that 4.5% correlate to in numbers? How many students does that?
It was 199 students total.
199?
Yeah.
Okay. And the other question, I see that the figures in the EL dropout rate are in plus 50%, which is staggering and alarming. And, you know, is there any correlation between the number, the 50% number, and the fact that our student population is now like 65% Hispanic?
Certainly, yeah, I mean, certainly our Hispanic population has increased, which, yeah, would raise that number, but I really think that the EL percentage is real. It's real, and what I would like to see us do is dive into who are those students, because there's different buckets there. You have the SLIFE students, you have students who are just EL, maybe level 1, 2 students who just immigrated to the United States with family. You have some of our EL students who are higher language proficiency who are just not engaged because they don't see the relevance of what they're learning in school to what they need to do for a job to survive. So I think we need to dive deeper into who these students really are and how we are addressing the different buckets.
Thank you.
Member Capola.
One of the things I'm wondering about is how many days go by before somebody's trying to track them down? Like you say, all of a sudden they're gone. That to me would be an important thing.
So part of the approach with the wellness teams, if we talked about the attendance policy with the attendance Fs, we tweak the language to reflect what we do in terms of when we intervene formally. And every day that a student is absent, they get a phone call home. But when it gets to 3, the wellness team kicks into place. 3 unexcused absences, or 3 absences actually. The wellness team kicks into place, and now we're talking about calling meetings. We've got the social worker at the table, the guidance counselor. We're formally trying to intervene. I think part of the problem here is, I mean, any number of variables come into play, whether it's, no working phones, no phone at all, they've moved. We don't have information on where that, the most recent place of residence was. I mean, all those things come into place, but it's not for lack of trying. And I appreciate you raising that, because I didn't want to give the impression that a student's been gone for a month and no one has attempted to intervene.
Right. The other thing I'm wondering about is obviously we're not giving them, and we've talked about this before, they obviously need an education, but they also need work skills. At some point we have to really think about that, how we take that population and give them the training like the TAP is giving, to students. And it's a quick thing for them, like he said, Mr. O'Connell said, is you train them, and now they're working changing tires and changing oil, So it's a quick fix, and it puts them right in the workforce. But I think, like Brian, I work with a number of, the undocumented and ELLs, and it's difficult to come here at 16, 17 years old, 18, and learn the language. It's easier when you're younger. So I think they're really struggling on learning the language, and they get discouraged very easily. But they also financially need to work and support themselves here. It's an expensive place to live.
But I
So-
want to say to you that the working group at Classical, when they were talking about that, they were talking about how right now, because the weather's getting nice, they've had kids who have come to them, the guidance counselors, the principal, saying they need to stop going to school because they need to be landscaping.
Right.
And many of these students talk about work. We were at Living in Two Worlds, and many of the presentations were about they're working 40 hours a week,
Right.
and trying to go to school. And so one of the discussions that happened between the teachers was needing to help educate the student on the importance of that high school diploma and how, yes, a work skill is important, but if you have that high school diploma with that work skill, you actually are going to get a better job than dropping out and trying to work without the diploma.
And these 199 are not, they're actual individual students.
Yes.
Is that correct?
And a little positive note, so 2016-17, we had 295 students drop out. Last year, we had 199, so we went down. We want it to keep going down.
Right.
Can I just build on that quickly?
Please, Superintendent.
Related to the Living in Two Worlds, there was a student who told his story, goes to school, goes to work, works 40 hours a week, starts his homework at 10 p.m., does that, stays up, works on it until 1 a.m., and then gets up and goes to school and does it again. I think that's extraordinary, and I don't think that that's the kind of schedule that most students could maintain over a long period of time. I think that's some of those students are in
You're
that
absolutely
number.
right,
Yeah.
but we do need to try to help them in staying in.
Absolutely.
And they still need to work 40 hours.
And so I was just going to add to that by saying, again, and we've been talking about this a lot and thinking about it in our budget process. We just can't simply offer those students a regular traditional day. We've got to think about ways to do it differently, because as much as students need work, a lot of these students have dreams of college, and dreams of professions that one would need a college degree for, and so. I agree with you. I want to make the high school day possible. I want to make the diploma possible. I want them to be college ready so they can realize their dreams like everyone else.
Thank you.
Member Satterwhite, and then Member Nicholson.
As you know, we spoke at the Mills Rap at North Shore Community College. I think it was last month. So as a lawyer, I represent accompanied minors, and they come here and they don't get work permits or whatnot. They're not lawfully able to work, so they don't work the jobs like I did, where I was able to work after school to be able to afford to live, because I was homeless as well. So they have to do these landscaping jobs, which are in the early mornings or when the sun's out, and other jobs that require them to be available at awkward times. So when we have that knowledge, we have to definitely do something about it. And this is just transitioning to the fact that I think that this data helps us understand that we need to do more with maybe some professional development for our teachers in the 9th grade and the 12th grade. 9th grade because this is when the students are coming in. And the professional development would be on transitioning. So when a student comes and either from middle school or from another country, we have the tools and support in place for these teachers to be able to get these students engaged and understand the importance of sticking to it. Because if we can train or educate these students in the 9th grade, maybe they'll be there more often the rest of the years. So I think that professional development, specifically as to transition, is important, and additional support for our 9th grade teachers and 12th grade teachers.
Member Nicholson.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and for all the work that not just went into the presentation, but also all the efforts that are going on this issue. I think it's really it's great work. I first just want to echo what Member Capola said about our work with EL students around vocational education. I think we've all sort of reacted to that number about the number of EL dropouts, and Member Satterwhite pointed out as well the dropout percentage by student program and how low it is at vocational program. And some of that is a selection bias about how that program is filled. But I think there's some real reality to the fact that if you're see a skill that you're going to be learning over the course of a program, that's going to improve student engagement. And so Mr. O'Connell mentioned the participation of ELs in the technical after school program. I think that's a tremendous opportunity and way to think about it. But to the extent that we can continue to come up with those kinds of ideas about how to align that meet those populations' needs with the vocational tools that we have, I think it's really a great opportunity. Sort of along those lines, I mean, I think going to a little bit to what we were talking about in the context of how we select students who are eligible for these vocational opportunities, if we look at the research slide about the students most at risk of dropping out are students who, that all of that first half of that list are all factors that we would say, maybe you're not ready for this vocational opportunity. When we think about the criteria for selection for the Discovery Academy for LINTEC, and I hope we can continue to think about how can we find those students who have who need work to improve in these categories and use vocational tools as a way to get there. And honestly, I think that's happening with some of the programs you talked about with FECT O'Leary and the vocational opportunities that are happening there. And I think it gets right at that issue of using vocational as a way to combat the what we see as people who are not doing as well in school as they could be, just in terms of how we use those programs. I did have a question about how so that we have the slide about the research says all these factors, and we have the slide about all the different preventions that we have. Are we looking at different factors and saying and matching those with the types of preventions, and what does that process look like? So in other words, if we see a student fails a core subject course, we know that we need to intervene. Like how do we select from the menu?
So I think the guidance and social workers work in tandem together with that. When they identify a student who's struggling, whether it be through attendance in the wellness teams or whether they're, struggling with their grades, whatever it is, they collaborate together to determine what does this student need, and then they direct them in the support that would best fit for them. So really the guidance and social workers are key in that. School nurses have a place in that. The health centers have a place in that. There's a lot of collaboration that goes on at the school level when we identify a student.
And are there ways to track how we're matching the interventions with the risk factors to know on a district-wide basis that certain interventions are more effective for students who are experiencing certain risk factors?
I mean, the social workers keep records of what interventions they provide. We have the tracking sheet for attendance, but I don't know that we have a formalized way to kind of put it all together in one place.
Yeah.
Superintendent.
It's so individualized, right? So that sheet, that slide that you're referring to, is like a bunch of proverbial nets, right? Like radar and nets to find students who are struggling. I mean, there's also the student support team. I mean, there's all of these processes that we have in place to identify a student who's struggling, to come up with structured ways to meet their needs. But the needs are so varied that I think it'd be really hard to track. And students change over time. I think it would be hard to track specific interventions because it's so individualized. The one thing that I'll say that Ms. Ruggiero alluded to is that, and relative to the group about whom I think we're all deeply concerned, is I don't know that there is a specific intervention for that group, given what we know about the profile of the student who drops out. But we have there is a program that we're investigating right now that we think could be really promising to target that specific group of students. In addition to all the other thoughts around like program structure and things of that nature, but this is an intensive support mechanism for those students that we're investigating right now.
I just have one more question.
Member Nicholson.
In this is really helpful. Both the data and the strategy. The other kinds of data that I think I remember seeing in the context of these presentations is comparisons to other districts.
Oh, I can give you that. If
Okay.
You want that. All right. You want dropout comparisons?
Sure.
I'm gonna find it.
The other recommendation is to
That's
have that sent to you if you.
Yeah, that would also be fine.
So I don't have it with dropout, but I do have it with graduation rate.
Okay.
So so you remember I talked about the annual graduation rate and then the adjusted, right? So there's two buckets.
Yep.
For the annual graduation rates, Lynn Public Schools was 74.3%. Boston was 75.1%. Brockton was 74.1%. Lawrence was 71.9%. Springfield was 76.9%. This is graduating. For the adjusted rates for graduating, we were 81.6%. Boston was 78.6%. Brockton was 84.5%. Lawrence was 73%. And Springfield was 80.3%. So we're higher than some and a little bit lower than others.
Thank you for the presentation and the
Thank you.
discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we're on to new business. First on the list is request to accept donation of read aloud CDs entitled "America" from Joanna Maury.
This is we just received a donation of CDs that has read-alouds of the Bill of Rights and various other important documents in American history, and we think it would be of use to our teachers.
Make a motion that we accept the donation of read-aloud CDs entitled America from Joanne Maury.
Second.
Second, requires roll call.
Mr. Castellanos?
Yes.
Ms. Capola?
Yes.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Ms. Gately?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholson?
Yes.
Mr. Satterwhite?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes. Next is from the McGinnis family. Their intent to award a scholarship from the Dr. James Leo McGinnis Memorial Scholarship Fund.
Make a motion to accept from the McGinnis family an intent to award scholarships in the name of Dr. James Leo McGinnis Memorial Scholarship Fund.
Second.
That requires a roll call.
I'm not ready for that. Roll call. My sheets of paper. Here we go. Mr. Castellanos?
Yes.
Ms. Capola?
Yes.
Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Ms. Gately?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholson?
Yes.
Mr. Satterwhite?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes. Next on the agenda is pay data, substitute pay data requested by Mr. Nicholson. Kevin McHugh will be speaking to that. Is that correct? I think we're waiting on the data, basically.
Yeah. We had requested to get some information on substitute pay data, and my understanding is that Mr. McHugh had prepared an analysis of that.
So for last year, we had a total, it's interesting because when you look at the number of substitutes required, we had a total of 19,900 requests. But some of those don't require. There are some actually staff that we do not provide, if it's a non-teaching position, may not have a staffing need for it. So when you adjust it down, there's 2819 of those. What brings the actual number of teacher subs needed was 17,081. We actually were able to fill 12,100 teaching positions, which is a 71% fill rate. Okay, and this year, so far, so only have through March at this point, because we're just getting to early April, the amount of substitutes needed, so I won't give you the gross number, the number of subs needed right now is 9,074. We're able to fill 5,008 which left the 55%. So you can see this year it's a little bit more difficult to fill as of right now. So that's an overview as far as, you know, how many subs have been out.
Sorry, you said the 9,000 was adjusted to take out the not, so those are.
Yes, if you want, the gross amount for this year is 11,842. But as again, some aren't needed, so we adjust it down. So
That makes sense. Okay. Got it.
With that, I think we're on to the next agenda item. And that's on me, the agenda, and I will, you all have a letter from the Law Department? You do? From George Markopoulos?
No.
Okay.
Do we have it?
I'm happy to explain the letter. There should be copies of it.
Didn't see anything from.
Basically, what it is it's related to the Marshall, the Thurgood Marshall Middle School, the old Thurgood Marshall Middle School, related to the bids. There was a request for proposal that was sent out, and the closing date was scheduled to 60 days of the opening responses for the RFP. The city received 2 bids from prospective bidders. One bid received from the City of Lynn, from CDC Inc., stated that its intention was to close on the property in July of 2020. Second response received by the City of Lynn, again, this is a letter from George Markopoulos to James Lamata, who was dealing with the part of the RFP committee. Second response was received by the City of Lynn on B'nai Braith Housing, stated its intention to close on the property in March of 2021. Both submittals were unresponsive to the request for proposals, and they contemplated closing dates far away from the 60-day closing period specifically referred to in the RFP. 60-day closing period was a material term of the request for proposals, and that the city expending significant monies to maintain the existing building and surrounding properties, which we're all well aware of, was a specific intent of the city to cease these ongoing maintenance costs by effectuating expedited closing date. As neither submittal was responsive, it's the opinion of this office, City of Lynn must reject both bids at this time, which has happened. And particularly if you understand it, entirely possible that other prospective bidders who were interested in bidding the property declined to submit a bid because of the closing deadlines required by the City of Lynn and its request for proposals. So to in any way find either of these bids complying with the RFP was not legally allowed. So that was from George Markopoulos. So the bids were not accepted, and at this point, if anybody has been there recently, Member Ford, if you'd like to speak to this a bit.
Well, I just think we've reached a point in time where it's going to take a couple of years before we're even entertaining probably another bid. And I think at this point in time, I know if I lived down in that neighborhood, I'd be pretty disgusted living across the street from a building that was being set on fire on a number of occasions. I think at some point in time, we have some money in the budget to demolish this building. I think we ought to vote as a committee to move ahead and demolish the building, and then, you know, down the road, see where that takes us before we give up the land or anything.
And I think that's the consensus on the council. That's absolutely what I think is the appropriate action. All the windows on the top floor have been broken. There's been fires breaking out in there. It is becoming a real serious danger to that neighborhood and the community, and for anyone that's deciding to go in there. So at this point, the appropriate action is to take the building down. Member Satterwhite.
And I just want to piggyback off of Member Ford. When we have houses that are abandoned and are a nuisance to neighborhoods, we're the first to tell them, shape up or we're going to tear it down. We need to be good neighbors. And I agree that it's unfortunate that it's going to cost us some money, but it's the right thing to do.
Paula?
And I think I would like to make it clear the state gave us the money to tear it down.
Yes.
So it's not like we are spending. That money was, we were hoping
Correct.
that we could sell it and then still have that money and without having to tear it down. So the money came from the state to tear it down. It's not coming out of any municipal budget, not coming out of the school money or whatever. It's there, sitting in an account to do what it was intended to do, take it down.
I think that's a great point. We actually had a meeting today in my office with some of the economic development team and Mike Donovan as well, and the money is there. It was given to us, was there for the specific purpose to take the school down once we had moved into the new Marshall Middle School, and there was indications that were maybe potential, and we all are aware of this, that school could be maybe repurposed, and the reality is that it just can't be done right now. Member Ford?
I'd just like to move forward with the motion to use the money that's set aside for the purpose of tearing down the old Marshall Middle School.
Second.
On the next agenda.
That may have to be on the next agenda as we go.
Okay.
We'll take this up on the next agenda. I know that there's been ongoing discussions to do that. We will take that up on the next agenda. It's not on today's business in terms to make that decision. But I think as part of that discussion with both the school committee, the council, and others, we are working towards what would be the next step, and we're talking about putting a market study together to actually take a look at what that potential site could be utilized for. We've put out 2 RFPs and basically have neither one has proved fruitful, to put it bluntly. So I think it's important for us to take a serious look at what will go there. Obviously, taking the building down is the first step, and then the next step is working to put a market study together. And we've been talking with MAPC to help us to put a real market study together so that we can identify what would work, and similar to what we've done at with the Union Hospital location. We went through that whole process, so it'll be a whole process with the public involved as well. So we will put this on for the next agenda to move forward on. I think everybody's position in the city is to address this as soon as possible. So that'll be on the next agenda. Great. Any other questions? Thank you. Next on the agenda is vote to continue non-participation in school choice.
I make a motion that we continue. Oh, sorry.
Member Satterwhite? For school year 219 and 220.
Obviously, Student Government Day, we had the mock school committee meetings, and one of the topics we talked about was overcrowding in our schools. Students had brought up the fact, well, why don't we have the school choice? Mm-hmm. And you had provided a good response. So I don't want people to think that by voting to not participate in this is hurting our overcrowding or not helping our overcrowding.
By voting to continue non-participation, what you're saying is that students or families that live in neighboring communities, for example, don't have the opportunity to come here for a tuition cost. So this is sort of protecting our schools, so to speak.
Okay.
I mean, if you voted to engage in the school choice program, we'd basically be telling everyone no. Mm. So, I mean, either way, it's going to be a no.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we have a motion on the floor?
Yes.
Second. That requires a roll call.
Mr. Castellanos?
Yes.
Ms. Capola?
Yes.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Ms. Gately?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholson?
Yes.
Mr. Satterwhite?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes. Next on the agenda is a vote for the last day of school in 2018, 2019.
I think I'm the only one with a kid that's enrolled in school, so I have to do this one. I'd like to vote for the last day of school for 2018 to 2019 school year to be June 18th of 2019, half day.
Second.
That requires a roll call.
Mr. Castellanos?
Yes.
Ms. Capola?
Yes.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Ms. Gately?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholson?
Yes.
Ms. Satterwhite?
Yes.
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes. Next on the agenda is consideration of changing the May 9th meeting date. Is that, who's going to speak to that?
That would be me.
Superintendent.
So as you'll recall, some time ago, a few months ago, I talked about our participation in a community of practice with the Schusterman Foundation, and participation, we've gone to the first of 3 convenings, and that happened in Dallas, Texas. We're there with school leaders from Fort Worth, from St. Louis, from Atlanta, from Chicago, a really intensive professional development that I think we all grew immensely from. The next one is May 8th, 9th, and 10th. And in order to receive the $100,000 grant that comes with it, the convenings are mandatory. So what I'm asking the committee to consider is not canceling the date, but to find another one, because I think we need it.
So,
Member Capola?
Is our meeting canceled in the end of April? Is that?
The 25th.
That's right, the 25th is canceled. I'd like to suggest May 2nd, that way we're not far out.
Sounds like
Because we haven't missed, we'll be missing that one at the end of April, but we'll still be.
Was May 2nd good for?
it's good for me.
That's a Thursday.
Yeah, I can do that.
yep.
How about you, Mayor?
Mr. Ford
I
is.
just got a question.
Mr. Member Ford?
While we're doing the May 2nd, which is, I think, good for everybody, should we all look to make the second meeting of the month on the 16th? Because I know, I think I talked to the mayor the other day, he's got a problem on the 23rd, and St. Mary's graduates on the 23rd, so I have a problem.
But the second meeting is the 30th.
It's the 30th.
The 30th is tech graduation.
Oh.
That's why I'm looking forward, I think the 2nd and the 16th would work.
Sounds good.
Superintendent
Completely up to you. I think we could still have, the tech graduation starts at 4.
4 to 6, yeah.
You know, I think we could still meet at 7.
As long as we don't have any
No,
subcommittees,
as long
we
as there's
just
no subs,
yeah.
go with 7 o'clock.
And we won't eat dinner.
We got before the ceremony, Michael.
Maybe there will be dinner.
Maybe there will be. So that might be a, Member Gately?
I'll bring crackers.
So I think on the table then is to go to the,
May 2nd and
That's
the 30th.
that's an open meeting.
the May
Thank you.
2nd
Pepperoni.
in place of May 9th is on the table.
May 2nd?
May 2nd and May 30th.
May 30th is already on the agenda.
Yep.
So replacing May 2nd, May 9th with May 2nd.
Yes.
That's correct. Is there a motion on the table?
Yes, so moved.
Second.
There's a motion on the table and seconded. There's a roll call required.
Ms. Cassianos?
Yes.
Ms. Capola?
Yes.
Ms. Ford?
Yes,
Ms. Gately?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholson?
Yes.
Ms. Satterwhite?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes.
Did I get that right? 2 May, 2 May and 9?
Thank you. Next on the agenda is ratification of votes taken in the Joint Curriculum and Policy Subcommittee meeting related to the Grade 8 Discovery Academy.
A motion was made to bring, bring a vote to the committee of the whole. And do we have anything to discuss?
Just a motion to.
Motion to
We just brought
accept.
a motion to bring
Motion
it
to
up to
approve.
the,
Motion to accept the
Academy.
8th grade Discovery
Grade 8
Academy.
to
Discovery
accept the
Academy.
grade 8 Discovery Academy.
So is there a motion for that?
Recommended to the full committee, yeah.
And recommend it to the full committee.
to accept that. That's, the motion is to recommend it to full committee to accept the Grade 8 Discovery Academy. Is there a second?
Second.
Requires a roll call.
Ms. Cassianos?
Yes.
Ms. Capola?
Yes.
Ms. Ford?
Yes,
Ms. Gately?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholson?
Yes.
Ms. Satterwhite?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes.
Bless you.
Just these up my chair.
So, next on the agenda is a request for executive session, but I would suggest that come following the communication and information on the superintendent's report.
Do we need to make a motion to change? Make a motion to put request for executive session for contract negotiations with the Teachers Union Local 1037 after the Communications and Information Superintendent's report.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We will, final piece on the agenda will be the request for executive session. At this point, we'll go into communication information with the superintendent's report.
All right. Quite a bit to share. Perhaps foremost in folks' mind is the incident at Hood Elementary earlier this week. In total, this is best described as an act of vandalism, one with a notably disconcerting element. Based on what is known about the timing of the incident, one could surmise that there was no intention to inflict physical harm, and at no point on Monday and since was any student at Hood Elementary in imminent danger. The real damage comes to the emotional side, given the nature of the incident. As such, both on Monday and since, the focus has been on engaging in a clinically supported approach of protecting and maintaining the normal routines of the school day. There's much comfort for students in that approach. I was at Hood for a good part of the day on Monday and can attest to the fact that it was a good day. I don't think it's proper in this forum to respond to newspaper articles, but there was a concern expressed in Tuesday's article on the incident that needs attention. This relates to the timing relative to when parents are notified of an incident or a concern in school. More specifically, there was a concern that parents were not notified until 1:45 p.m. when the damage to the classroom was discovered at 8 a.m. To be clear, any scenario such as this requires school personnel to first ensure the safety and well-being of the students directly impacted. Immediately thereafter, steps need to be taken to ensure that the building as a whole is stable. That includes, but is not limited to, communicating directly with staff and ensuring that the messages and procedure is uniform and engaging any related actions. In scenarios like the one at Hood, where there is an active police investigation, it is most prudent to wait until there is substantive and accurate information to communicate and not a moment before. Failure to do so can result in misinformation, miscommunication, and potential chaos. What is more, given that there was no imminent danger, the best approach involved making sure that we understood precisely everything that there was to know before communicating to parents. The investigation formally concluded around 11 a.m. The call message, which included an invitation to a community forum on the same day, was written and scheduled to go out in advance of dismissal. I'm pleased to announce that in addition to Monday, the arrival, school day, and dismissal at Hood went smoothly each date thereafter. There's a firm commitment to keep the lines of communication open, especially as it relates to scenarios such as these. However, school administration really needs the flexibility and latitude to determine when calls go out based on the scenario. I applaud Ms. Dufour and her team for their efforts, as I believe the situation was handled perfectly in keeping with protocol and best practice. I am pleased to announce that on Monday, we were able to restore normal use of technology across the district, and I'm going to toss quotes around normal. To be clear, the cybersecurity consultant is still monitoring and assessing the network to ensure that there's no suspicious activity, and is engaged in a thorough investigation to determine if there are any data exposure. Full restoration will be a process. As staff was informed on Monday, we are not yet at full bandwidth. That will happen in the coming weeks, but the current capability allows for most functions. As you are aware, we are planning to administer the English Language Arts MCAS for grades 3 through 8 on paper. That process will begin the week we return from vacation. The process involved with getting prepared for taking the MCAS online is significant and time-intensive. In working with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, it appears as though there is not enough time to get to a point of readiness and administer the remaining exams online. Accordingly, this morning, principals were informed that math and science will also be administered on paper. So we're all paper, all tests this year. Having said that, I really want to applaud the efforts of the Lynn Public Schools community during the network outage. As I've said in the past, you find out a lot about an organization at times of adversity. In this case, I wouldn't call it the discovery of new qualities. I would call it a confirmation of ones I knew to be the case. I'm really proud of us. In the superintendent's report for November 28th, for the November 28th meeting, I reported on our efforts to research the admission policy at other technical schools serving similar populations to ours. To be clear, this is part and parcel of thinking about providing access to groups of students who, through no fault of their own, might not be able to meet the 6 grading quarters criterion. That research turned up 0 departures from the Department of Education model admissions policy. Further searches have yielded the same result. The Lynn Tech director, Ms. Karakitis, has been in touch with the Career and Technical Education liaison at the department and determined that, in fact, no vocational schools in the state have departed from the model. However, the regulations call for academic criterion but do not specify any duration. As you know, any admissions policy change would need to be approved here first and then at DESE. We are committed to providing access to as many students as are interested in vocational education. I'm hesitant to call the admission situation a roadblock at this point, but rather than get hung up there, we're proceeding with finding other ways for students to engage. A little bit earlier, you heard from Brian O'Connell. The technical after-school program is a wonderful opportunity for students who are interested to gain foundational skills and knowledge, and in some cases, an industry-recognized credential. The expansion of the offerings to summer programming will only broaden the number of students who can benefit. Further, in partnership with the director of LVTI, we're looking at ways that students can access courses during the day. We had only a preliminary conversation, and as you might imagine, this involves overcoming or navigating the challenges of the rotating schedule. Nonetheless, here, the goal is to communicate that we're committed to providing access, and there are multiple ways to make that happen. As you know, we currently employ a 2-day, 3-day model for pre-K across the district. The continuation of this model was approved by vote on May 31st, 2018. As is the case with the Discovery Academy, decisions about approaches such as these are in your purview. I'd like you to make an informed decision. We just need the time to dig in on the impact to space and staffing and the implications of returning to a 5-day AM/PM model. I should be prepared to present on the topic at our next meeting, whenever that, May 2nd. There's been some interest expressed in the professional development around trauma-responsive classrooms. I'd just like to offer a very brief overview of the course offerings, and there are 3. Presently, we offer Effects of Poverty in the Classroom, a de-escalation professional development, which is a train-the-trainer model, and finally, trauma-informed practices for educators. Each of these courses takes a deep dive on the research and best practices on the topic. I should mention that during the 2016-17 school year, 11 schools received a robust overview of the seminal concepts of trauma response by Laura Luna. I participated on 2 occasions and can attest to the richness of the presentation of useful and applicable tools for educators. While these presentations are focused exclusively on trauma and response, there are other professional development offerings wherein participants are acquainted with the functional concepts of trauma and response, although they are not the exclusive focus of the learning. For example, all principals, every last one of them, and core academic department heads, every last one of them, participated in the Meeting the Needs of English Learners course for administrators. Therein is a component on students with limited formal education, or SLIFE students. Here, participants are acquainted with the trauma these students often experience, as well as the research-driven practices to support them. In short, I think we have a fairly robust professional development effort happening around trauma and response. Last, but certainly not least, a big shout out to Kristen Tobacco, history teacher at Classical, who was awarded the Brian McSheffrey Teacher Award at the 2019 Massachusetts History Day state competition this past weekend. The award was given to Ms. Tobacco in large part for her effort in launching History Day at Lynn Classical this year. Many congrats to her, and that is all.
Member Satterwhite, then Member Nicholson.
I was able to attend the Hood community session where parents came. I want to just thank you and Deputy Superintendent Powers and the mayor and the chief and Officer Wright for hosting that, and it was very informative. One of the things that you and I both heard and we spoke about briefly afterwards was I don't think it was more so when the call came through, but where the call went to. The father had said that he didn't get the call, and then we spoke about it afterwards, that it probably went to one number, the main number. Is that something that we can look into to maybe have the ability for people to opt in to receive calls?
A parent can go to their school at any time to the clerk, and any phone number can be added. We also can do text messaging. They just need to go to the school to have it done.
That'd be good to put that out there, because even in a scenario where parents share custody and they're both required to get notification, we want to make sure that that happens. But you were informative. The parents had every question answered. You had a Spanish interpreter there that was able to help with the Spanish community. It was a great thing. I also wanted to just say that Laura Luna is brilliant. What she does with regards to her presentations have been brought to just different educational forums, and I'm happy that she's partaken in the trauma trainer training, etc. For the city. So those are just the two things that I wanted to address.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Nicholson.
Thank you. I just had well, thank you for the update. I think the really positive developments on a couple of the issues that we were talking about earlier, actually. And I had a follow-up question on one of those. The access for courses during the day for the EL students, could you say a little bit more about like how what that would look like?
Well, to be clear, that wouldn't be exclusive for Ls. I mean,
Okay.
there are many examples of schools. This is more. I'm thinking more about regional vocational schools that will allow member districts to send students who just go there for the vocational piece. They might just go for the auto tech or just go for the culinary, but they're doing the rest of their core program at their, district school. That's something that we're exploring. But as I mentioned in the report, the rotating schedules make that hard because you'd be missing different classes each time you're. Oh, excuse me. At the. I got to work on shortening those arms. And high five Kevin from here.
We get bigger tables.
Yeah. So it's just working around that piece, and we're just starting to look at how we might make that happen.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Jim?
Yes, please.
And then Member Gately. Member Castellanos.
Superintendent, thank you for your report. I appreciate it. It's really great to see that we have PD and trauma work being done in the schools. I believe there's so many forms of trauma, and to learn the effects of poverty in the classroom, trauma-informed practices, it's vital, because I think the complexity of trauma is very, it impacts equity in education. As a social worker, I see it every day. A lot of those who are impacted by trauma, they're left vulnerable. They lose control, and a lot of these symptoms go out into their everyday life. And it's something that is so important to understand because it does impact their learning, and it impacts their teachers, It impacts the level of delivery of services. It's something so important to really to continue to work. I know it's in the SEL framework, and I really appreciate that discussion is being held. To echo Attorney Satterwhite, Laura Luna is great. I've got to see her speak. She is an asset to the Lynn Public Schools, as well as the others. We have a lot of other school psychologists and personnel, social workers, and adjustment counselors who are really hitting the ground running, and they're really collaborative and really focused on trauma-based practices, and which is vital to definitely to achieving equity for these kids.
Member Gately?
I am so happy that you're going to be talking about a 5-day model on May 2nd. The other thing is, I didn't know that. But I got this in my packet. It's from Brian Field.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if we're supposed to read it or.
I think Member Nicholson was actually going to speak to that, so.
Okay, thank you.
Under new business, and
Thank you, Member Gately.
You're welcome.
So yeah, the Lynn City Council.
Can't talk about that right now.
What?
it's too late.
We can't. Attorney Miles.
Is there not going to be an opening meeting?
You can read it. Just-
Can you read the letter into?
No vote can be taken on it.
Yeah, there's no. It's
No,
just
we're
an.
not for a vote or anything.
It's just an announcement of a. I don't think we. Yeah.
No.
No.
That was too.
Yeah. So the
No, it's not to adopt. It's basically just an informational from Councilor Field.
Yeah.
Appropriate, is that correct?
Is that all right? That's already my house. Great. Thank you. But thanks for checking. We want to stay on the right side.
Keeping us on the straight and narrow.
So the Lynn City Council Trash Litter Subcommittee is organizing a poster contest in the Lynn Public Schools for second graders to design a poster urging people not to litter as a strategy to combat litter in the city and to educate kids and to enlist the students of the Lynn Public Schools to educate them and also to get them to educate their families. So that's going to happen on Earth Day, which is Monday, April 22nd, 2019, and representatives from the council, from the school committee, from the mayor's office, from the superintendent's office will be talking to elementary schools about this, and so if people are interested, they can reach out to Councilor Field to help with those presentations. And I think the schools are going to select winners, and those winners are going to be displayed around the city at City Hall and local businesses as a way to sort of spread the word in sort of using models that we've seen, I think, work in other public safety and health scenarios. So,
In fact, for the every year there's a fire safety program that all of the different posters are, and then they end up on billboards. So that was the idea behind it, to take a look at doing something like that to address litter and educating people on the importance of that. So thank you for the information on that, Member Nicholson. At this point,
Make a motion to go into executive.
Request for executive session for contract negotiating with Local 1037. Is there a motion?
yes.
Motion.
Second.
Second, that requires a roll call.
Second.
He motioned, I seconded.
Mr. Ford?
He did.
Hi,
I'm
I'm
just the guy in
Michael.
the middle.
Okay.
Let's get the show over
Ms.
with.
Castellanos?
Yes.
Ms. Capola?
Yes.
Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Ms. Gately?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholson?
Yes.
Mr. Satterwhite?
Yes.
And Mayor McGee? It's too busy.
Yes.
Okay. 9:08.
What happened?
Is there,
What?
is there anything in specific, particular?
No, no vote was taken.
Okay, good.
Yeah, no votes. Don't have to.
You don't even have to do that, because no votes were taken.
Yeah.
That's fine.
We just got to come back into session, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Do we come in
Do
full?
we do the, we just we do
No,
the roll
just-
call to come back into session, or does everyone?
No, it's, all stands. Regular session.
Motion to come back in from executive session?
Motion?
Second.
Oh.
Okay, that requires a roll call?
Mr. Castellanos?
Yes.
Ms. Capola?
No, she can't. Yeah.
No?
Present?
Mr. Ford? Ms. Gately?
I guess.
Mr. Nicholson?
Yes.
Yes.
And Mr. Satterwhite?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes.
No votes.
There were no votes were taken in the executive session.
No votes
And
taken.
No votes were taken in the executive session. Open for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.